This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by ERI. ERI has a mission to protect people, the planet, and your privacy, and is the largest fully integrated IT and electronics asset disposition provider and cybersecurity-focused hardware destruction company in the United States, and maybe even the world. For more information on how ERI can help your business properly dispose of outdated electronic hardware devices, please visit eridirect.com. Welcome to another edition of the Impact Podcast. This is a very special edition of the Impact Podcast because we're so lucky and honored to have my good friend, longtime friend, Tom Szaky with us. He's the founder and CEO of Terracycle. Welcome to the Impact Podcast, Tom.
John, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's just an honor. You are just truly one of the rock stars of the sustainability, ESG, and circular economy world. We've known each other now almost 15 years.
Wild.
And you've been doing it since the day I met you. You were just one of those huge vision, unbelievably committed, hyper-focused individuals who just seem to never lose their way. And you've been an inspiration to me and thousands of people around the world since that time I met you. And it's just truly an honor to have you on now, because I think as you and I were chatting a little bit offline, we're about to enter some really interesting and hopefully exciting times.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You know, it's well, first, thank you for that really kind introduction. And I think it's amazing where sustainability is going. You know, I've been doing this for 20 years now, and it's always been an issue. You know, but it's moving from sort of let's find some efficiencies, and bank some cash and call that sustainability, to really people, waking up to the environmental crisis we're in, whether it's climate change, the mass extinction we're living through, I mean, you name it. And I think, it's even been heightened, with the pandemic we're living through. I mean, COVID's the first time we've, really seen our impact on the planet as we've sort of lowered our production and emission levels down, animals retreating to where I haven't been before. And so it's amazing to see. And now, of course, as well with the new administration that I think will be taking these issues a bit more seriously here in the US, it is absolutely the time to be thinking about how to deploy business in a way that drives impact in addition to profit. And I think the world is very much ready for it, as I think our investors and stakeholders, like team members and customers and so on and so forth.
Tom, it's always fascinating to me and to our viewers and listeners to understand what made you, who made you. I believe you were raised in Canada.
That's right. Yes. Originally from Hungary. So I was born in Budapest in 82, and that's only really relevant because it was communist then. And the story goes sort of in 86, Chernobyl happened when I was 4. And that was really nearby. And the effect on us was really that the borders destabilized. My parents were able to leave sort of as political refugees, if you will. And we sort of hopped around Europe seeking asylum, finally landed in Canada. I got there when I was 7. So I effectively grew up in Canada and then came down to college in New Jersey, and then have been living in New Jersey ever since. And so for me, went from communism to capitalism, right? And there's virtues in both. Here in America, we like to sort of shit on communism. Of course, on communists love to shit on capitalists. But I think there's virtues in both, right? Both are there's positives and negatives. And to me, I fell in love with entrepreneurship really, because of the contrast. Because entrepreneurship is all about, you have a great idea, you work really hard, and you can create anything you want. And that is really maybe the embodiment, if you will, of the American dream. But, and I say here's the but, right, that I remember this so clearly. The first class at Princeton was Economics 101, and the professor gets up on stage and says, what's the purpose of business? And the answer which is, really appropriate opening question, but the answer she was looking for was profit to shareholders as the purpose of business. Oh. And that's how it's taught. And I get it. I'm not anti-profit, but I would say, profit is more an indicator of health, right? If you're profitable, you're going to flourish, grow, and live for a long time, be healthy. Yes. And if you're not profitable, it's like being sick. You're going to, shrivel and die at some point. You can't be, unprofitable forever. So it's more, to me, it's like an indicator of health, right? But that's not the reason of being. right? The reason of being is like, what do we do? What do we create? How do we learn, leave society or the world better? And I think that's really what impact business is about, right? Like, how does it impact the world? And then can it be called a business? Can it do so in a financially sustainable and ideally financially flourishing capacity?
When you were growing up in Canada, was the environment top of mind in your household or in the society or community you were living in back then?
So Canada is where I think my love of environment really grew. It's not like, my parents are both doctors. I'd say very sort of normal upbringing, not necessarily, but there's a lot of camping in Canada. There's a huge connection to nature. I mean, Canada is mostly nature, very few people, relatively speaking. And so there was a lot of time spent, going out into the wilderness and really getting an appreciation for nature, which actually, when I came down to the States, I felt that even more because how America wasn't as much like that. When we went camping in Canada, you take a tent and a canoe and you go out for a week, right?
Right.
Then when we went camping in the US, you go to a parking lot and you plug in, right? I mean, I'm exaggerating, but not really, you know what I mean?
Right.
And to me, that even heightened it more. I was like, I missed it a bit, and so it's always been something that I've been very passionate about, but really coming out of Canada, I think, is where it really hit home.
Tom, you're so unique in that 20 years you've been at it and you're only 38. So, I mean, the fascinating and fun part for guys like me is to see how you're going to continue to change the world in the future. And we're going to talk a little bit about the future later. But go back to Terracycle, the founding of Terracycle at such a young age. Where was your epiphany? Where was your aha moment?
Sure.
And how did you create Terracycle out of that aha moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it was a series of things, right? So at the beginning, I fell in love with entrepreneurship in high school. Started my first company when I was 14. It was a web design company, but really for the selfish reasons, fame and fortune, right? Which, comes with entrepreneurship, but not benevolent reasons. Then, as I sort of had this thinking around the role of profit in my first year of university, I started seeking an idea that would be profitable, but also purposeful first, actually. And then could you do the purpose at a profit? And I was looking, for this, and the actual inspirational moment was my friends in Montreal who had gone to school. They started growing some pot plants in their basement. They couldn't make the plants work. They finally started taking organic waste from their kitchen, like kitchen scraps, and feeding it to worms, and then taking the worm poop and feeding it to the pot plants. And miraculously, the plants were doing incredibly well. And it lit this light bulb off for me when I heard about this, and then later, saw it. Is this exploration around garbage. And garbage really fascinated me academically because it's such a weird topic. So, think about it. Here's some sort of neat factoids. Everything in that, that in your office or in mine here, everything we possess in a world where we pride ourselves on possessions will one day, with no exception, belong legally to a garbage company. Isn't that wild? And I mean everything, not just like the paper on our desk, but the carpet, the wall, everything. And if you really think about it, in a relatively short period of time.
Right.
For how big that is as an idea, what industry can you point to that says legally we'll own everything one day? It is also the least innovative industry per dollar of revenue it enjoys.
Wow.
Isn't that wild? And it's a big part of it is it's an industry that we literally, it's shit, it's poop, it's smelly, it's crap, it's all this stuff. It's almost the butt of many jokes, right? You don't study hard, you'll be a garbage man. Right. So it's this amazing, it has high purpose to solve. It touches absolutely everything. And there's no innovation. It's like blue ocean, everywhere you go, you can create new things, challenge models. And it's why, I've been able to do this for so long because I get the experience of a serial entrepreneur, but staying in the same gig because it's an infinite playground, and that to me is incredibly stimulating. And then you get this huge overlay that it's incredibly purposeful at the same time.
Wow. So you now got the whole worm and the pot plants growing. Where did Terracycle fit in, and where was the aha moment that you could both change the world on this infinite playground, but make a profit at the same time? Well,
so, very pragmatically, Terracycle started quite literally as a worm poop company. Like the idea was like, oh, I'm going to do that. That's great, right? Yeah. And that's how we first met, right?
Right. That's right.
Yeah. And Terracycle was actually Earth Cycle. And the logo of Terracycle, when I originally drew it, was supposed to be a worm, right? It really was a worm poop company. And that's how we began. We said, let's make consumer products out of waste, taking worm poop, liquefying it, packaging it in used soda bottles, that whole thing. And then started, getting it into major retail, Home Depot, Target, Walmart, all the big suspects. And within, that's what we were for the first 3-4 years in our history. And, took it to about from literally, college dorm room to about 6 million in revenue. Okay. And we had this big sort of moment, a huge structural shift at that time where we asked ourselves, are we accomplishing our mission, which we had set at eliminating the idea of waste by making products out of waste? And we realized the answer is unfortunately no. No, because if you're going to be a product company, your business hero is the product, right? And then you're going to try to make the very best product, which means even if it's technically waste, you're going to choose the very best waste. And we even had like scientists choosing this organic waste, but not that organic waste to feed the worms. Yes, we were packaging in used soda bottles, but we were choosing bottles that were not, that still looked really good, not crushed. And we were definitely never going to touch dirty diapers or cigarette butts or really, difficult things. So we said, look, we have to fundamentally shift our business materially to make the business hero not the finished product, but the garbage. And that took about a 1-year transformation, but we effectively shut down the whole worm poop business, which was at the time, not bad, like a $6 million business and nothing, to sneeze at.
A big division to shut down.
Yeah, and do this transformation right into what we are today, which is a company that helps make things that are not recyclable, made from recycled materials, and in the end reusable. And that was actually a very challenging but important shift. But it allowed the company to grow significantly in scale. We're now national in 20 countries around the world with teams all over the planet, working with just about every major brand in the world, and doing these sort of big transformations, helping recycle take everything from dirty diapers with Pampers in Holland to cigarette butts in Canada to you name it, hundreds of waste streams. And then even help them reinvent their products to be entirely reusable and so on. But that transformation was very important and linked centrally to, are we going to be able to fulfill our purpose with the tactics? And we realized that the tactic of worm poop wouldn't do it.
And what today, if you were to sum up, I know you've iterated Terracycle brilliantly over the years. If, as you stand today, what's your core mission? If you and I were on an elevator together and I said, hey, what are you doing? You said, I got Terracycle. And I said, what does Terracycle do? For our listeners and viewers who haven't been exposed to it yet.
Yeah, absolutely. So Terracycle is a innovative, mission-driven waste management company, with a purpose still, the same purpose, to eliminate the idea of waste. And we have 3 divisions that allow this to happen, effectively moving products from being linear, take, make, waste, to fundamentally circular. And so the first division asks the question, is that object recyclable today?
Right.
And if it isn't, then we set up national platforms to make it recyclable, typically funded by the manufacturers or the retailers or a community or something along those lines. And we do that, at scale for hundreds and hundreds of waste streams. Then the second division asks the question, can that object be made from waste? And then we help, companies from P&G, make their shampoo bottles from ocean plastic, all the way to Unilever make their deodorant from rock and roll festival waste, and so on and so forth. Then our third division, which operates under the Loop brand, says, can we go one step further? Instead of a recycling-based circular economy, where we are, the best thing to do is make it from recycled materials, the product, and make sure it's recyclable, we try to shift to a reuse-based circular economy. And that's what Loop is. It's like a global reuse platform. And there we're working with, clients from McDonald's and Burger King, all the way to almost every major CPG company in the world, who are making now their products or their packages in fully reusable packaging forms. Think your Haagen-Dazs ice cream now in reusable stainless steel, to your McDonald's coffee cup in reusable high-end plastic. And then when you're done, when you're done with the product, we, Loop, are the waste management function of reuse. So we, take your dirties, sort them out, return deposits, but then clean them instead of, say, shred them and melt them, so that they can be used again. And that's effectively what Terracycle is all about. 3
divisions. For our listeners and viewers who just joined us, we're so honored to have with us today Tom Szaky. He's the founder and CEO of Terracycle. To find Tom and his colleagues and the great work that they do, please go to www.terracycle.com or www.loopstore.com, which he was just talking about. And we're going to talk about more of that later. Also, if you want to learn more about Tom, he has 3 books out, but here's 2 of them. These are great books: Outsmarting Waste, which I've read, and The Future of Packaging. These are 2 great books if you're interested in getting involved in the sustainability or circular economy revolution and being the next Tom Szaky. Read these books, because I'll tell you what, so much of the information you need to know is here right now. You know, Tom, you talked about 20 countries, and I know you travel a lot. I travel a lot for the business that we're both in. You know, what's fascinating is both of you and I got in the industry before Al Gore won the Nobel Peace Prize for Inconvenient Truth. Sustainability wasn't a big thing here in the United States. In Europe, it was big because those countries are geographically challenged in terms of size, so they just couldn't be throwaway societies. In terms of Germany and UK and Italy and France, same thing when we go to South Korea and Japan, beautiful countries that really had this generationally built into their DNA. Now I feel like you and I have hung in there long enough, and that we've reached a tipping point in the United States. Am I, looking through the world through rose-colored glasses, or do you feel the same way? Are we at that tipping point, and is circular economy behavior, sustainability here to stay and grow in the United States, generationally speaking?
I definitely feel exactly what you're describing. And so, yes, the answer I would believe is absolutely yes. Now, with that said, Europe is leading the way, especially Western Europe, with an epicenter being probably France, Germany, UK, really leading the way.
Right.
And then absolutely right. Rich, dense countries have intrinsically a bigger issue to contend with, like Japan, or other countries like that. But North America is really waking up. I would pinpoint it probably to late 2017, early 2018, at least for garbage.
Okay.
Now for different topics like energy, it came a bit earlier.
Right.
But in the world of waste, it was right around late 2017, early 2018 when the world really moved from being garbage is a problem to garbage is a crisis. Maybe earmarked by or landmarks would have been the turtle had a straw up its nose trending on social media, all the way to David Attenborough's Blue Planet 2. There's different sort of straws that could have broke the proverbial camel's back. And then from there, we had Greta emerge, a lot of young activists who were really brilliantly speaking up. And it hasn't gone away. And I think COVID has actually even created an opportunity to accentuate it. And so it is something where, and we're seeing that now, manifest in the more traditional areas. Companies in our world, consumer product good companies or retailers that were sort of flirting with sustainability are getting much deeper into it. Investors are putting way more resource, it looks like, against impact investing and upping their commitment into impact categories, probably driven by investors asking them to, or looking for funds that are more impact focused than traditionally focused. And this is also, a big part of it is look at what's happening out there. I mean, California, is burned down multiple times. Australia, Brazil, if you look at global fires, all the way to the visibility we have on the amount of plastics, that are in our drinking water and, polluting our oceans, very clear effects of climate change. So I think this is also because, the world is struggling, right? And, we are now seeing that more clearly than we ever did before.
I know recently you deservedly raised another $25 million. Talk a little bit about where that money's going to go and what's your vision of growth for the months and years to come?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2020, we actually raised 2 times 25. We raised a total of 50. So we did 25 million was raised for Terracycle US, and then another 25 was raised for Loop. So we did, effectively, I think technically just under 50 million in capital last year. And we're now actually in the middle of raising another big round of about 150 million that we're in the middle of for this year for the whole enterprise. So we're in a pretty bullish growth mode. Now, the good news is we've been profitable, for a while now. We're not a startup. We're at, at this point, you call us a growth company. We're about, just under 500 team members and so on and so forth. But it's because we know that we can grow significantly faster than just what our profits, would allow us to reinvest. And there's a lot of appetite, to do this. So, for example, the capital we raised under Terracycle, we actually did under what's called a Regulation A offering for Terracycle US. So, we have to file with the SEC, but we're allowed to then raise from in a crowdfunding type model.
Oh,
So while we had some bigger checks, 6,000 investors came in to make up, that round, which is great because we engage about 250 million people in our program. So a lot of the folks who interact with us, became investors. A little small. The minimum investment was like $700, and that allows us to really grow our U.S. operations. So we're doing that in really three key ways. One is, boosting our existing business units, getting more salespeople out there faster, strengthening them by bringing in more capabilities and automation. Then thinking about brand new innovations around the topics that we already focus on. How do we think about collecting and recycling waste in very different ways? Whether it's R&D innovations, we're doing a big project on chemical recycling or solvent-based recycling, all the way to going after sort of new verticals and new areas we haven't gone after before. And then the other is also looking at acquiring companies. We acquired a company 2 years ago out of Chicago that does light bulb recycling, formerly called Terracycle and now called Terracycle Regulated Waste. We're now in diligence on a couple of other acquisitions we're looking at. So we're in this mode where, we have appetite as well to bring companies into, our ecosystem and show them how we think and help them accelerate their overall growth. And on Loop, Loop is a big investment. Loop is going to be one of these things that, requires a good amount of capital before it becomes profitable because it sets up a whole new way of consumption. There's a lot of infrastructure we have to build. So the investment that came in on Loop from, actors like Nestle or Procter & Gamble made investments and so on, is really to help set up the reuse infrastructure that the Loop project requires to be successful around the world.
got it. What new verticals are you most excited about? Where do you see greatest need right now in terms of driving future growth opportunities?
So for us, a very big one is how do we help, we've done a lot on how do we help companies recycle, but how do we help them make products out of waste? Because if you think about recycling usually moves, the material into lower and lower and lower applications, right? So you start from a high-end thing, then when it gets recycled into slightly lower, I think paper is a good example. Paper can be recycled technically 7 times. And why it can is the fiber length gets shorter as you recycle. So, bright white paper turns into newspaper and newspaper turns into toilet paper, right? And then that ends up in our gray water. So, how do we make sure, that we can get the really undesirable waste into high-end applications, right? So we've done, quite a lot of work, but we see a lot more opportunity in that. And a lot of companies are also interested in, helping make their products from unique waste streams, whether it's, ocean and river plastic, all the way to the waste on the top of Mount Everest. There's a lot of, waste out there that is not being collected because it creates, maybe different materials of different capabilities, or different prices. And this is a big area that we're really excited about. So there's lots of these sort of areas that we're now doing big investments in, and so far it's really paying out. The companies out there are really, as you said earlier, materially shifting, and embracing sustainability in much more of a core way than more of a historically sustained. It's always actually very interesting. Where is the sustainability department in a company? Right? Is it seen? Sometimes it's held by legal, which means the company views it as a risk to be managed.
Right.
Maybe it's held by marketing, where they view it as an opportunity for publicity. Sometimes it's held, as its own budgeted function, where they view it more, I believe, as a business principle where they can win. But it's actually very telling where a company puts their sustainability function, for example.
You're so right. You're so right. Once I was with Jim Gowan, close to where you're sitting today, and Jim was the head of supply chain. And then they made him chief sustainability officer as well at Verizon. And then, and I asked him why, and he explained to me why. And I'm like, aha, that was when the light bulb went off. As you said, instead of seeing it as a risk, they saw it as an opportunity, and they use it as an opportunity at Verizon. So you're so right on that. Talk about plastic. It seems though, Tom, the media has done a wonderful, but in one way, almost an overweight job in just focusing on plastic as the world's biggest crisis. Is that warranted? And are we going to figure this out along the way here? Or what are your thoughts on the plastic crisis that does exist? But I'm just wondering your thoughts on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's a bit misdirected, not wrong, but misdirected in the sense that I think it's not that a material is benevolent or evil,
Yeah.
whether it's an alloy or a
Yeah.
glass or a fiber or a ceramic or a polymer, right? Like
Right.
plastic. I think the issue is the idea of single use, that we extract these materials from the earth, creating great harm on the planet. And then we use them for like 10 minutes and throw them out. That's the problem, right? It's the throwaway nature, the single use nature, which tends to dominate plastics more than it does some other materials, right? And I think that's what we need to really contemplate and think about, because plastic itself is a magical material that allows us to do so many things we couldn't do.
Right.
And we do need to honor it. It helps us be healthier. It helps us access things that we couldn't afford before. It helps lower carbon impact. It does a lot of great things, but it also is synonymous with single use. And it's the single use thing that we got to really solve. Now, single use as an idea is only 70 years old. If we think back before the 50s, we cobbled our shoes, we mended our clothes, we bought milk from a milkman, our motor oil was in reusable containers. We also bought way less, and we lived much more humble lives. And that, I think, is the key thing we got to think about, because in the past 70 years, we've created this gouging on consumption throwaway culture, which has also almost identically created the environmental crisis we're in right now. Those all came hand in hand. Now, luckily, it's only 70 years old as a philosophy, this idea of, throwaway hyperconsumption. And I wonder if we can correct that.
Interesting. So you raised now the 50 and the 50, and now you're raising a whole nother round of capital.
Yeah.
You're in 20 countries now. I know you're going to be opening up in three new countries in the near future?
India's coming up. There we're opening with our foundation, so we have a nonprofit, and then there are a couple more countries we're looking at in Europe, like Portugal, Italy, as well as countries like Indonesia and so on.
Talk about India. India taking a great brand like yours and a visionary like yours, and converging that with India, one of the greatest populations in the world. Talk about that opportunity. Does that get you out of bed in the morning? Is that really where you get to take all of your 20 years of experience and the vision for the future and really get to see change happen faster than ever before?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, to me, any new market is incredibly exciting personally, because I get to discover in great depth, what the culture in the country is all about.
Yeah.
But the waste crisis is really pronounced in emerging regions, especially Southeast Asia. Mm-hmm. That's where it's because now you have populations, big populations that are moving into the consumerist culture. And there isn't the infrastructure to do proper waste management, right? So a lot of, like, for example, in India, the first thing we're starting with is a project to clean up rivers, because, people just informally dispose waste, not because they want to, but because there's no other alternative, into canals that go into rivers in the rainy season and then right out into the oceans. And it's something like, 8 rivers around the world are the source of about 80% of the ocean plastic, in the ocean. So that's where we're starting. But it's really exciting every time we deploy in a new country to see how is what we do localized, how does it change, and how does it stay the same? Because garbage is very much a global truth, right? It's not it is more similar country by country than it is different.
India is so big and vast. I've been there. I assume you've already been there as well.
Sure.
Where do you start? It's so daunting in terms of size. How did you decide where to start?
Well, so this is where, we really try to focus on what do our partners want. And so here, we're going to start on the Ganges River because that's where our partners want us to focus. And then once we have established a base, then when we start thinking about how do we deploy other programs, when we opened in China, which is, just a sort of large, we set up our office in Shanghai, but then we started doing programs focused on major cities, but really driven by the partners that are funding our program. So we really let that be partner driven, and that makes it much easier than us having to do big evaluations and take a gamble on where we should be located.
It's because the partners have the highest touch and best feel for the political, geopolitical, and socioeconomic and cultural issues.
Could be, or it could just be that they have a priority for a certain thing that happens somewhere. It could be much less sophisticated, but generally they're the actors on the ground who understand, and we're there to serve them. And so that really is the driver of where we look at deploying and why.
Tom, 20 countries is just tremendous. India, China, amazing. How, you're so young for having done so much. And I say that only in an endearing way. I mean, it's such incredible what you've done at this age. Where do you go? I mean, how much further can you take it? There's so many countries out there. And how far in advance do you map this out?
So, we take it day by day. We are so crazy busy that it's more about,
Right.
directionally we know where we're going, but
Right.
then we're also, really there to react and learn and pivot, as needed. So, one of the things I don't believe in as much, I don't know if I'm right or wrong on this, is to do sort of big 3 to 5 year planning.
Okay.
We set our direction very firmly and where we want to go, and then we work as hard as possible to get bigger every year. Now, luckily for 17 years, we've only grown. But we, look out really the calendar year, make sure, things are protected, we do things in a very conservative, budget processes, those sort of things. But we don't really believe in the big long-term visioning, only because things change so fast as well. And we are more focused on how do we be agile, shift, adapt, and learn. Than to fix a course and stick with it. Right now, what we will not compromise on is our core beliefs, which is we're all about how do we solve waste, but around that we're incredibly flexible.
For our listeners out there who just joined us, we've got Tom Szaky. He's a CEO and founder of Terracycle. You can find him at www.terracycle.com or www.loopstore.com. He has 3 books out. They're on Amazon. These are 2 of them. I've read these 2. They're amazing. Tom, I'm on the Loop Store site right now. I love it, but I want you to explain it to our viewers and our listeners now. How does it operate, and why did you set that up as a separate entity from the great Terracycle website?
Yeah, absolutely. So Loop is a global platform for reuse, where brands can enter and create reusable versions of their products. And most major brands have, or at least CPG companies have done so. So think Tide laundry detergent in reusable stainless steel, or your Ferrero Nutella, now in reusable glass all over the world. And then retailers can embed that and make that available to their consumers. So you can go into a store soon in the US, Kroger, Walgreens, where you'll be able to buy, all your favorite brands now in reusable packaging. And then when you're done, you throw it into a Loop ecosystem at the store, sort of like a waste management function of reuse, if you will. And we set that up as a distinct entity only because there was investors interested in investing in Loop distinctly. So we just, as mentioned, we did 2 rounds in 2021 of just under 25 million, another 425 million. And Loop was one of those, and their investors like Procter & Gamble, Nestle, or Aptar, Firmenich were ones who wanted to strategically deploy capital directly into Loop.
Is the next round of capital you raise going to be institutional, or is it going to give opportunity to our listeners and viewers to invest also like you did in the last one, where you picked up 6,000 of your users who invested in you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We may do more crowdfunding in the future, or potentially even go public. But the next major round we're working on, which is for 150 million, is something where the minimum check size will be about 25 million, so more institutional investors, and folks that are focused on impact investing, and that is going to be an enterprise-wide capital raise, or is an enterprise-wide capital raise.
Got it. Tom, we have so many viewers and listeners around the world now, and that are 17, 16, 15 that want to be the next Tom Szaky. And I always say that with love and care. So what's some advice now looking back? Instead of looking forward, look back. And for the next generation of entrepreneurs that want to change the world, that just don't want to make a dollar, but they want to make an impact. They want to make a change. What words of wisdom and pearls of wisdom can you share backwards with them?
A couple of things. I would say the idea of purpose is tremendously valuable. You can, if you are a purposeful business, you can actually grow faster, open doors you couldn't open before. Purpose is tremendously valuable. So definitely be purposeful. As an entrepreneur, just start, stop thinking and just start. People overthink, and you're going to learn everything on the way. But a part of that is, really honor failure and critique, and honor it by learning from it and not being upset by it.
Right.
Those are some of sort of the golden principles that have been, very important, and have, especially in a world that is getting faster and more dynamic by the minute.
Got it. If you were to pick 1 or 2 words or a sentence that best embodies Tom Szaky, tell me what that would be.
Oh, geez. Well, I think, the things I pride the cultures we create on is, fierce innovation, really hard work, and doing also with only in the spirit of how do we make the world or society better? Like, how can capitalism be just oozing purpose in everything it does?
What I also love about you, Tom, is your obsession with clients. You have figured out a way to integrate your brands with more brands than anybody I have ever met. I mean, and that's fascinating because they're not a cookie cutter. As you
No.
and I know, all these brands have their own culture and DNA.
They
and
do.
You figured out how to work with all of them. So you have an obsession with pleasing and meeting your clients where they are that I haven't seen with anybody else, and that's a talent. That is.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I think a big part of it too for us is it's not about us getting people to love our purpose. It's about understanding theirs and how they can win in whatever their goals are by leveraging, the way we think about the world, right? And I think that's very important. If you run a purpose-based or impact business, it's not it's empathizing with the person you're working with, whether it's a customer or a client or whoever, and helping them see how they can further their own goals with your purpose versus getting them just to believe in your purpose.
I love it. I love it. For our listeners and viewers out there, this has been Tom Szaky on the Impact Podcast. He's the founder and CEO of Terracycle. Something tells me he's only in the top of the first inning of what he started to do, because I'll tell you what, he's so young and he's got such a big vision. You can find him and his colleagues at www.terracycle.com or www.loopstore.com, or read his books. There's 3 of them on Amazon.com and in other great bookstores. I've read 2 of them. It's really worth a read. Tom, you are truly the embodiment of why I created this mission of this podcast called Impact. No one person has made an impact like you that I've met along the way. And I just wish you good health and more success so you continue to change the world for the better. Thank you for your time, the generosity of your time of joining us today. And I can't wait to have you back on again, my friend.
My pleasure. Have a wonderful afternoon. Great to connect today.
Thanks so much, Tom. You're the best. Thank you.
Thanks,
so
John.
much.
Great to
All
chat.
right,
Look forward to doing it again soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. This edition of the Impact Podcast is brought to you by Engage. Engage is a digital booking platform revolutionizing the talent booking industry. With thousands of athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and business leaders, Engage is the go-to spot for booking talent for speeches, custom experiences, live streams, and much more. For more information on Engage or to book talent today, visit letsengage.com.